Narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, is a mental health condition that affects how you view yourself and relate to others. Having NPD means you have an excessive need to impress others or feel important. That need can be strong enough to drive harmful behaviors, negatively affecting you and those around you. Today, my guest, Brad Shreve, and I are going to talk about NPD partners and domestic abuse in the queer community. My name is Eric. Welcome to the craziness that lives inside my head.
I'm Brad Shreve. I am an author of two novels, part of my Mitchell Riley mystery series, which features a gay PI in Los Angeles. He lives in Silver Lake. And the first book is A Body in a Bathhouse, which was my pride and joy because I published it in 2019. Despite the name, it is not an erotic novel, though there's a touch of it in there. But I don't want anybody to be disappointed thinking, oh, they're going to get this salacious book and have fun with it. That's fine, but that's not what this book is. It's a mystery. And the second book in the series is Body on the Hill. And the hill is the hill that the Hollywood sign is on, and that's where the body is found, and that has part of the clue. I am currently working on a third novel as part of the series, and that is going to be called A Body, Some Bears, and a Blade, in which an individual is killed at a bear event, which is I named it the Bearapalooza in Los Angeles, my fictional bear event. And then I have a third novel that is kind of in the works. It's going to be a period piece, which I've never done before. And it's a little risky to do a period piece because if you get it wrong, people that know history will let you know. But that's going to take place in the 1920s. So I'm looking. I'm not an LA native, but I absolutely love LA history. I lived in LA for 20 years, and so I have enjoyed digging in deep on that. So that's what's far as my writing. I love to be creative. As far as podcasting goes, I have this great podcast called Going Hollywood, and I say it's great because I have a wonderful co-host. His name's Tony Maeda, and Tony is a film historian, and so Tony knows the ins and outs of the story. And like most film historians, he's a bit snooty, we shall say. And so I have a regular guy's perspective, and so we talk about the background, we go into the behind the curtains, and then we share our opinions, which very frequently I have him aghast that I don't like certain movies and vice versa.
So, and so today I want to talk about with my audience, but NPDs partners, narcissistic, was it narcissistic
Personality disorder.
personality disorder, right? And having a partner who's NPD and can be abusive in a relationship. You don't think about it. I mean, the way when I was in that relationship, there's a lot of things was going on. A lot of things I you know. Then after I broke up, I realized that the control, you know, sometimes when you want a man to control you sexually, but when it becomes obsessive and when it comes abusive, I was because I did a podcast on what was it PDM uh, what do you call it PDMD that's the one they
PTSD.
BDSD, right? I did a podcast on that, and the guy who I was talking to who knew all about it, he says you gotta when you ask your partner to stop, they're supposed to stop. I said, oh really? I mean, it took a
Being
while.
being controlled willingly can be a lot of fun, but if it's not willing, then that's a whole different story.
Right. When you say stop, stop.
Yeah. Yep.
So anyway, I just since I read about, would you like to talk about the domestic abuse in the queer community? I remember
Mhm.
hearing that years ago. I mean, and actually I heard something about it in the late 70s, early 80s, but I never really thought about it. As I got older, I have, and I've seen it. I mean, I had a cousin who was talking about two lesbian women back in the 70s. He said he was talking to this woman. He didn't know she was a lesbian until until her girlfriend came and slapped her across the face because she didn't want to talk to any man. I said, "Oh." So, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, it's not well enough known that it exists. I was in a abusive relationship 20 years ago, I think it was. Actually, it was 20 years ago. And, I was an executive with a hotel company. And I used to drive employees to the shelter. And I always thought, why don't they just leave? I didn't, I was compassionate, but I also didn't get it. Never did I expect that I would be in a domestic a situation like that as well. Um, and while I was in it, I was doing anything in the world to save it. Um, I look back now and it's hard for me to imagine that I was in that situation. Um, but I get it now. It's all easier said than done because it is control. It's not just physical control, it's mental control.
Mhm.
It's being put in a place where you are totally vulnerable and dependent. Um, they're masters of what they do. Uh, and I don't even know if they know that. I think it comes naturally to those individuals. But I will say there is at the time, I really should look it up because I don't know if it's true anymore. They still have it. The Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Center has the place is amazing. It's the largest gay and lesbian center in the world. I wish I knew how many employees. It's in the thousands. They have a domestic violence counseling program. It had just started when I started going, and at that time, it was the only one in the country. I hope that's still not true, um, but it's needed. It's needed because it's not as talked about and not treated as seriously. I can tell you that.
Mm. No, it's not. I mean, I didn't. I I mean, I'm an independent, so I don't like to be controlled.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I thought about it when you get into I was I was seeing a therapist years ago, and it says that I don't like to be abandoned. He goes, my therapist goes, I bet you no man ever left you. And I said, no. He goes, I bet you left first. I said, yeah, why would I wait? Why would I wait? If it ain't working, I'm leaving. And he said I had a fear of abandonment. So I was in this relationship and I stayed into it as long as I could because I was trying to break through that fear. But then it gets to a point when someone is kind of controlled, and then I think I read up on, they call it, was it gaslighting you?
Yes. Yeah. I hear the term used a lot, and I kind of understand what it is, but I don't know the full definition. I just know that it's uh, doing something and putting on you in some manner.
Yeah, it's like being you don't know what you like. If I forget to do something, right? And
Mm-hmm.
say, yeah, that's because of your age, and then I got to look at that up to gaslighting. All I know is it's control. It's
Yeah.
control. And they do things. And I remember when we first met, we're having this conversation, and he was telling me about himself. It was something, he wasn't looking in my eyes. He was looking somewhere else. And I'm thinking, is he making this up?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I read on it, they said that's what they do sometimes. They make themselves greater than what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And but if I had stayed in that relationship and did what he wanted me to do, I would have been very vulnerable. And I just can't see. I mean, he wants to move way out into West Virginia in a house. And I said, I don't want to live way out in the woods where I can't get to civilization. And I had a cousin, she says, you know what he's gonna do? you're gonna move out there in West Virginia, and and he's gonna kill you and take all your took all your money. But then I just broke it off. It got to be disrespectful when I think he was gaslighting me. What was it? I only saw him once or twice a week because I refused to give up my house. So I had to, and I have cats, so I came home. And then if I'm not with them, I can't get in touch with him. When I asked him, "Oh, what was you doing? You're supposed to do this." "Oh, I was doing this and I was doing that." And something said he was lying. To make a long story short, I found out that he was lying. Um,
Hmm.
and then he said, "So what was it? So what's the difference? We're not really going together." And I said to him, "I just don't like to be disrespectful. I don't care what you do, but don't lie to me and being disrespectful, especially because if I'm getting ready to be together with you,
Hmm.
then I expect to be respected. Now, if you want to fool around with somebody else, being that we don't live together and we haven't really gotten to that point, just tell me. Just tell me. Don't make up these lies. Because
Hmm.
then I'm thinking, if I did move in with you, what other lies you gonna tell me, you know? So anyway, that's getting back to this abuse, gay abuse, domestic abuse. I didn't understand it in the sense that how could any, especially a gay person, how can any gay person allow themselves to be abused? But I
Hmm.
realized this is not all about beating up, beating on a person.
Right.
It is mental. They have this
Hmm.
mental abuse. Sometimes they had a little verbal abuse. I like the verbal abuse he did. He goes, "Oh, I'm just joking." And I said to him, I said, "I
Yeah.
don't know." I mean, he was white and I was black. So he would do a lot of, I call it stereotypical black stuff to me. And then I give him this look, "Oh, I'm just joking." And I said, after a while, it doesn't become a joke anymore.
Yeah.
It, you know, it becomes abusive.
Yeah. Yeah. I make a lot of racist jokes. My husband's black, and I make a lot of racist jokes, but we both do it, and it's our way of dealing with the absurdity of racism because we don't, it's so absurd, and it's our way of kind of letting out the steam, um, and making fun of it. But you can do it. You can be manipulative and use it against somebody as well. In your situation, that can easily be done. I've
Yeah,
seen it done.
yeah. I mean, after a while, I didn't think it was. I mean, the day we
Yeah.
broke, the day we broke up, he said, I know about." He said, "Yeah, a typical black person." And I
Hmm.
just said, "Well, you don't have to worry about me anymore. It's over." And that was it. That was it. I mean, come on. He was upset. I was upset because I'm being disrespected, and he was trying to tell me he wasn't being disrespected. And then he said, "Oh, a typical black person." I
Oh,
mean, no emotion, no, is that remorse? No remorse, no empathy, no empathy. What couldn't see it my side. My
yeah.
so it's
Yeah. My situation, I'd like, you know, if the situation was different, I can't say if my situation was different, I can't say whether I would have stayed in the relationship or not. It's hard for me to believe I would have, knowing my past and knowing myself since then. I have bipolar disorder. I was not long after coming out and leaving a marriage with a woman and my daughter. Um, I was lots of drinking and substance abuse. My life was spiraling downhill. I didn't know I had bipolar disorder at the time. So um, I had was not long out of another relationship that wasn't going well, and I'm the one that ended that. And it ended somewhat amicably. But then I found to this one, um, and I was the way I see it, I was at such a low point in my life. I was totally vulnerable, completely dependent on him. I made I at least four times the amount of money on him than he did, but I depended on him financially, um, emotionally. Uh, I've been with my husband for 17 years and I love and adore him, but I don't ever want to need him because after I left this relationship, I said, I never want to need another person again. So if my husband's Maurice, if something happened to him, I would be distraught. I would be devastated. It would hurt, but I would be okay because I can take care of me.
Right.
And that's the difference. I needed him. And I swore that will never happen again. So um, I needed him to make me feel important. I needed his love. I needed his validation. I really got wrapped up into, he was a DJ
Mhm.
and um, he was extremely good looking. He was a model. Well, there's all kinds of different types of good looking. He was a traditional model type, very buff, beautiful man. And he was charming. He wasn't the smart. He was dumb, but he was very charming. And so when we went to clubs, we never waited in line. You know, DJs are adored, so we always had attention, and that made me feel important. You know, we were walking through the door. Well, it wasn't us walking through the door. He was walking through the door, and I was following behind. But that was not my perception of it. And so we were all the attention. And I really got milked into that, having grown up in the Midwest and in the South, being in Los Angeles, um, you know, going into these nice clubs and being able to walk, you know, past the line with everybody yelling at, you know, who the hell are you, and getting free drinks all the time. I my ego was eating that up, so that was making me feel important. He um was playing games like he was the very first person that ever said I love you. But
Mm.
then he swore that was never him. He was the first one that said because he wanted an open relationship. I had just left one and swore I'd never have it again, but I said, you know, whatever. And he said, you know, let's not have anal with anybody else because that's too personal. But then he swore he never had said that. You know, it was those kind of things. And I was spiraling so bad that he had me convinced I was losing my mind. Like things that he would do, he had me convinced that I was hallucinating them.
That's gaslighting.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
gaslighting.
yeah. Uh, and I was really, I mean, I was going crazy because I had bipolar disorder and didn't know it, but he had me really convinced I was like going psychotic.
Mm.
Um, and it was tough. It was, you know, the police came to our house 3 times, I think. The third time was the last day of our relationship, though
Mm.
it wasn't really the last time I'd seen him. Was the day that I watched him being driven away in the back of a police car. And um, I said, wow, it's over. Now what am I going to do with my life? Because at that point I had no money, no job. I lost my career. I was, you know, I was on drugs, alcohol, and I wound up homeless. But in the end, it all worked out. You know, that's a whole different story of its own, which we can get into.
When I came, I had the same experience. I stopped drinking and drugging in 1984, and I met a guy in 82 who I was madly in love with. Met her on a gay boat ride, but he had a lover. So I got sober and believe you know how it happened. I got sober and who do I meet? I met him. And to make a long story short, I moved him in. I thought we were in a relationship, but long story short, he didn't think so.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's my birthday, and we were supposed to go. He was going to uh, take me out to dinner on my birthday. So I left work early because I didn't want to go to dinner straight after work. I want to come home, refresh, take a shower, and I come home, and the bedroom door is shut. That's why the bedroom door is shut. So you know what happened. The typical stuff you see on TV.
Hmm.
You open the door and there they are.
Hmm.
I went berserk and I get rid of him. And he said, no, he's staying here. I say, not staying in my bed. And then I went to the kitchen. I pulled out a butcher knife. I was going to stab him. Then luckily I was sober now. I wasn't drinking. I was
Hmm.
sober. And this voice came into my head. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Is he worth it? And then I realized going to jail and going through all that, he wasn't worth it. Luckily, if I was drinking, I would have stabbed him. And he's yelling at me,
Yeah.
come on, you want to do it? Come on, stab me, stab. So finally, I just sat quiet until they did what they had to do and left whatever he left with them and the store changed the locks and I was sober
Yeah.
and it still didn't work because when I kicked him out, his sisters, he had three sisters, they would call me up to take him back. I ain't taking him back. I ain't taking him back. I did take him
Were you,
back. I did
were you
take,
newly sober though?
huh?
Were you newly sober?
When I was 2 years sober when
Okay.
I moved him in. So I was 2 years sober.
Yeah,
Just
because you can be when you're newly sober, you can be pretty vulnerable
I was because
because
I
your true love is gone.
yeah I was but anyway to make a long story short I moved him back in. Um, this guy called me up and looking for his lover. And then I kicked him out again. No, I didn't kick him out this time. What he did was he signed himself into the hospital to get sober. I think they have a award for people who's trying to get off the alcohol and stuff. And I went to see him there. His social worker I was talking to the social worker. To make a long story short, he was in there for 30 days, and the social worker called me up and said that he's coming home. And I said to her, he can't come home because I'm a recovering alcoholic. I can't handle it. I can't handle it. So they wouldn't let him out. So he called me up and cursed me out. And that was I mean, even though you're sober, you still wind up doing. I think he was the last alcoholic I had in my life.
Hmm.
He was the last alcoholic. That's why it shocked me with my last relationship. You don't have to be an alcoholic drug addict to do alcoholic and drug things.
Nope, 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 not at all. And getting sober doesn't mean necessarily a person becomes an angel. A lot of people make that mistake as well. They're humans, they're still human beings.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice for the audience, those who think they're in an abusive relationship?
Reach out. Take a look. I hate to say this. Take a look at your part of it, and I don't mean that it was ever my fault because there's never a reason to manipulate somebody or uh, physically hurt somebody like he did with me. But when I look back and see my part of it, which if part of recovery is learning, you can't take care of what they did. You need to look at what your part in it is.
Right.
And that's something I learned when I went to therapy to get over the domestic violence was, my first meeting with my therapist, he was talking all about me and I was getting angry because I'm like, he was the problem. Why are we talking about me? And then he's like, you can't do anything about him. You spent 3 years trying to change him. And actually, I do have a piece of advice. You spent 3 years trying to change him and you can't change another person. You need to change yourself. And that's all you can handle. That's all you can do.
Mm.
And that was what made a difference. And here's something that was said to me that really made me open my eyes. If you're in a situation, if you're in a relationship and you're trying to change somebody, and for any reason, if there's violence or they're just not, I have a sister, I love her. She's been through 7 marriages, and every time because she's tried to change the person.
Mm.
And what somebody said to me is, imagine your parents when they were your age and you tried to change who they were and change the way they think. Do you think you would have been successful? I said, no. And they're like, why do you think you would be any different with him than you would have with your parents? And it's true.
Mm.
A relationship is making accommodations, but changing who a person is not.
Yeah.
So don't ever need somebody. Love them passionately, love them unconditionally, but make sure it's returned.
Well, I said this to a cousin of mine. I said, because she's having men problems, and I said, well, if he ain't got a job, he ain't got a car, and he doesn't have a roof over his head, I said, I sort of remember years ago, I forgot who it was, Billy something. Nothing from nothing leaves nothing from nothing
Yeah,
leaves nothing.
yeah.
As I remember that song, I told her, well, what would you want with that? You know, she goes, well, then she goes, well, maybe he's down on his luck. I said, well, I've had enough of people who've been down on their luck. I said, because why are they down on their luck? You know, I don't know. It's I just don't like this abuse and it's amazing. I've seen it in the gay community. I've
Hmm.
seen it. I've seen it. And then I've also seen it on another level. Uh I remember this guy. I don't know if he's still alive yet. Um oh God, Albert. His name was Albert. And I met Albert through his lover. I didn't know at the time. You know how you meet somebody in the park back
Hmm.
in the
Oh,
day.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And he took me home. Um, and he was living at that time. The guy was living with and his brownstone, which was very interesting. This is back in the 70s, and I didn't know this. Now I know it exists, but it was an older man at my age back then. He was his brownstone, and he had I think like maybe 10 men living with him. They all were down on their
Oh,
luck. They're all were
mm,
down on their luck. So they live with him. I mean, they get these jobs, I guess these cheap jobs. Remember, like a dishwasher,
hmm.
but they always had, I know when I first got there, he was telling me about it. Yeah, if you ever down on your luck, you could go to so and so place. Anyway, Albert and him lived in this rooming house. So that's how I met them. And to make a long story short, let's go down, fast forward. I think have you ever had somebody that you trick with? You only trick with them when you see them either at the bar or the bathhouse, or it's always the same one.
Hmm.
So now it's been five. I think we did it for 5 or 7 years. So now him and Albert had their own apartment up in what is it? Oh, the gay part of New York City. And he took me there. I met him at the movie house. He said, "No, let's go home." I went home and well, Albert knew who I was, and I went into the bedroom. We did what we had to do. He fell asleep, and then Albert told me to get out. He said, "Don't get out and don't ever come back." Which I didn't. That was the last time I fooled around with him. But then I noticed this, but I'm like, why are you with him? Why are you with him? But then somebody mentioned, that was in the 70s. And then when they came out with this terminology, open relationships, when that come out in the
Hmm.
90s? Open relationships.
I was before then, but yeah, I think it became more common
Yeah, but I
used.
didn't hear that in the 70s, that terminology.
Yeah.
I know I didn't hear it. And then I started hearing this open relationship. And I'm like, well, why would anybody want an open relationship? Especially if you love somebody.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna get some people upset with this when it comes to open relationships. I've been in two,
Yeah.
and they have their pluses. They're fun, but yeah, I couldn't imagine being in one right now. But here's my why I said people I'm going to get flack is I have seen open relationships that work. Uh, I think they're few and far between, but I have seen them. And I'm a big time observer. I'm a writer, so I analyze everything that goes on in my life around me. What I have noticed in most relationships is the open relationships is one of them usually goes along with it because they don't want to lose their partner.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm not saying in every case, so don't get angry if you're in one and it works. That's God bless you. I'm glad it does. But in most circumstances, I've noticed this, and especially when I've seen polyamorous relation,
Yeah.
they bring in a third,
Yeah.
so you see a couple and they'll bring in a cubby. Um, one of them is usually very much, if you pull them aside and you talk to them, they're distraught over it. And again, I'm saying in most circumstances that I've seen, don't you don't if you have one that's working out, you don't need to come prove it to me because I've seen that. I'm saying in most circumstances, I have not seen that happen. It's usually some form of manipulation, or even if the person that wants the open relationship doesn't realize they're manipulating it, they don't realize they're with an individual that is so insecure that they're willing to go along with something they don't want because they want to hang on to you.
Right.
Um, it has to be mutual. It has to have very strict rules, and everybody has to follow those rules. The first open relationship I was in, when we said, he asked me, he said, "Do you want to have an open relationship?" And he said, "I'm going to leave it up to you." And I was like, it makes me uncomfortable, but I am just newly out, and maybe it's good for me, to kind of play around a little bit. And so we sat down and discussed the rules. And he's the one that said, "No dating at all, none." I said,
Mm,
"Okay, that's fair. I don't want to date." But then he would go to a guy with dinner, and then go to a movie, and then go to his apartment.
mm.
And I'm like,
That's
"Well,
a
you want on a date?" "Oh, no, no, we're not. We weren't dating. We're just friends." And then we had sex. I'm like, "Well, dinner, and movie, and sex is a date." "Oh, no, no, no. We're just friends." You get this kind of, you get yourself into that kind of mess if you
yeah.
go into it. And so um, that's my take on it.
Well, in my last relationship, being that he was older than me, and I didn't we didn't discuss it, but I didn't in my mind, I wasn't against it for the simple reason that I could tell he likes young boys. And what you just said about not wanting to have a companion with about the same age and getting older,
Hmm.
and I mean, being that he was more sexual than I was, and maybe it'd be okay. But we never discussed the open relationship, but I knew what he was doing, and
Yeah.
I never said anything until I got tired of the lies. I never said anything, but he knew. I mean, this is the same man who wants to move to West Virginia. I used to think that. So why, if he wants to do this, why would he put me in West Virginia? But then, if you put me in West Virginia and I'm really dependent upon you, that
Hmm.
means that you're going to be in complete control.
Yep.
And then I
Yep.
thought about it. Could I do that? But then I felt it very disrespectful to a point. Now, I did have a person on my show who talked about what you just said. If you're going to get over a relationship, you got what are the boundaries, what are the rules, stuff like that. But the problem for me is if if I allow you to fool around just for sex,
Hmm.
don't. Now I'm gonna repeat somebody else said to me back in the '80s because he was having a problem with his open relationship. He said, "Yeah, my lover's upset because he came home late. I came home late for dinner, but I'm home for dinner like that." And then I said to him, "Well, what's more important, getting home for dinner to be with your lover, or excuse my expression, fooling around in the subway and the tea rooms, you know,
Hmm.
with somebody? I mean, is that more important than being with somebody I don't know. That's
Well,
the
one thing I heard a lot from people was, when um, I would get jealous because there was a lot of manipulation in there, and they would say, "But you got to remember, whose bed is he sleeping in tonight?" Okay, so we have a bed together. That's supposed to make me happy? No, I heard that so often. Yeah, he's going off, but remember, whose bed is he sleeping in at night? And that was supposed to make me feel better. And one night, I told you this guy, he was, you know, a model. There was this other guy I knew who, he was kind of a scrawny leather daddy kind of thing, and he had this uh, uh, partner who was just muscle, and it kind of makes everybody's, catches everybody when they walked in the door. Well, one night, my partner and I were having a fight at the bar,
mm,
and he comes over to me, the one that had the partner that was also a big muscle bound. He said, "Brad, you got to realize they're the pretty ones. So, you have to kind of accept uh, you kind of have to just accept that who they are, and go with it." And I'm
mm.
like, that's kind of sick.
I think.
I think back to that. I'm like, even then, in the midst of it, I thought that was crazy. But because
Well,
I'm like,
like I
that's
said,
sad.
I was dating a still sober. It was my but he wasn't an alcoholic. I was dating a Brazilian, and he came to me and he said that he wanted to live the rest of his life with me. And I said to him, I couldn't, I said, I can't do that because I have feelings for you. Now, if I look at you just somebody to have sex with, maybe, because to me, there are people you wouldn't want to be with them, but the sex is good. And
Oh
that's
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I can deal with. But he's he to make a long story short, he was fooling around with this guy. He brought the guy home, which now we weren't because we weren't having sex anymore. Because he had no place to stay. And I said, "But pay me rent." Seeing being that he was paying me rent, he could bring anybody he want.
Yeah.
He slept in the living room. Well, anyway, he did something stupid. I don't want to get into it. That's another subject, and I kicked him out. So what happened was, the guy that he was fooling around with had rented. He was gonna move in with that guy, of course, and the guy showed up to move the furniture out, right? And this is his new guy now. He gave me this look. He goes, I got myself a hot man. And I laughed. I said, you got yourself a hot mess. And what you just said to me brought to mind. I mean, because he was Brazilian, he was hot, hung, he was everything that
Mhm.
a lot of gay men want. But who want to go through that bullshit?
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, my eyes lit up when you said Brazilians.
Yeah. Who wants to go through the bullshit though?
No, 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 not at all. Not at all.
I don't think it's worth it.
No, no. If you need a trophy on your arm, then you need to think about what's wrong with you.
Yeah. And I think he was only going with the guy because the guy had an apartment. I'm quite
Hmm.
sure he's not paying rent to that guy. I mean,
Yeah.
well, anyway, I think I'm gonna end my podcast now.
Okay.
It's
I
only supposed to be a half hour.
all right. Can I give one more suggestion?
Yeah, yeah.
If somebody thinks they're in a violent relationship or an abusive relationship, not necessarily violent, there's a book called Men Who Hate Women and the Women That Hate Them. Oh no, I'm sorry. Men Who Hate Women and the Women Who Love Them.
Oh,
Ignore the gender part of it and just read it. Just because I read that, I'm like, oh my God, this is describing our relationship in every shape and form. That was the book that made me really start to open my eyes.
well, is it? I said again, it's men who hate women and
Men Who Hate Women and the Women Who Love Them.
yeah,
And it's all about how they gain control and manipulate. And like I said, just ignore the gender part and
yeah.
deal with the personality part.
That's what I was reading about with the narcissist. They said narcissists probably don't. If you're very what you call it, um, if you financially secure and you got a what's that word they use? In other words, if you don't need them, put it that way,
Hmm.
they get jealous. They're jealous of that, and they
Yeah.
hate you for that. And that's and then we fall in love with them. Meanwhile, they don't love us.
Hmm.
They jealous and they try to bring you down.
Yep. It's all control.
It's all control. Yeah, it's
Yep.
all control. I'm gonna say one more thing.
Okay.
Always tell this to new guys that I always meet who talk about love and all of this. I said in the 80s, it was a black lawyer. He wanted to marry me. Now this is he had a house in Vermont, and Vermont was the first state that came out with gay marriage.
Hmm.
So we were gonna date for a year, and then just didn't see if it works out. And then we was gonna go to Vermont, get married. Then we come back. He was building two houses. One for us and one for his parents. He said, you don't have to work. I'm a writer. He said, you don't have to work, just do your writing. And listen to this. I don't have to work, just do my writing. It's gonna be his house, our house, and take care of his parents. So when that part, the take care of the parents part came out, and I'm like, that's why you don't want me to work. You want me to take care, in my mind, you want me to take care of your parents. Well, the
Until he
interesting,
said that, it sounded like a good deal.
well, he thought it was a good deal. Well, yeah, to take care of, yeah, you're right, to take care of the parents. But see, I had a very good job and I couldn't see myself giving up my job, you know.
Hmm.
So to make a long story short, we broke up after 5 months. And then he said that I didn't guess. I said I wasn't in love with you. That's the good part. Because if I was in love with him, who knows? I probably would have done it. But I said I didn't love. I said I'm not in love with you. He said you didn't allow give it time enough for us to fall in love. And I said to him, I said, what you want is not love. You want me to depend upon you, which is the same thing as control. I
Hmm.
mean, imagine if we did get married. I mean,
Hmm.
that's how I look at it. I told it to a girl. She goes, well, if you're married, you got to get part of the house. That's not the point.
I'll tell you that the worst way to find a relationship is to be looking for a relationship. That's what I've learned. I've had some great relationships in the past, and we broke up because it just didn't work out, and it was
Yeah.
amicable, and they're friends.
Yeah.
That's going to happen. But every one of the good relationships I had, I wasn't looking for one. My husband, I was like, I told people, I am not looking for a relationship. I just want to meet some guys that I can date. We can go out to dinner. If we have sex, we have sex. If not, it's all good. I just want to just enjoy life. That is exactly when he stepped in my life, and I'm like, oh my god, I've fallen in love. That's if you're out there looking for it, it's not good. That's
No,
my opinion. It's scary. You can want it, but don't go hunting for
I know. I know. I try.
it.
I try. My therapist, my psychologist, said to me years ago when I first got sober, he goes, just because a man likes you doesn't mean he has to fuck you. And then then you know me, I have a big mouth. I said, I don't want every man that I like to fuck me, just the ones I want to get fucked back, you know. You
Well,
know.
I want every man to want to fuck me. That's just my ego.
Okay, Brad, it was nice talking to you.
It's my pleasure.
You just heard the craziness that lives inside my head.